call the roll, please?
Danielle McKenzie. Here. Jason Blair.
Here.
Melissa Hunt.
Here.
Louis Williams.
Here.
Adam Webb.
Here.
Mark Ham. Glenn Lewis.
Here. Would you please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Item number 2 is the consent docket. Item A is receive and approve the minutes of the regular city council meeting held March 18, 2019. Item B, receive the minutes of the regular planning commission meeting held February 12, 2019. Item C is declare a 1993 GMC flatbed truck, VIN number 1GDGC2 4K0PE549980, a 2004 Ford F2 truck, VIN number 1FTNF20L94EB25422, and a 2005 Ford F350 truck, VIN number 1FTWX30505ECO7789 as surplus. And item D is approve and ratify claims and expenditures for FY 2018-2019 in the amount of $3,666,271.22.
Move to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. It is a consent docket. Would you call the vote, please?
Danielle McKenzie.
Yes.
Jason Blair.
Yes.
Melissa Hunt.
Yes.
Louis Williams.
Yes.
Adam Webb.
Yes.
Glenn Lewis.
Yes, item carries. Item number 3 is consider renewing the contract with the Center for Employment Opportunities in the amount of $120,000 to provide one supervised work crew in the Public Works and Parks Department.
Mayor and Council, we've been using this company for over 5 years now. They provide a crew that goes out and they will edge all of our curbing and our sidewalks on most all of our arterial streets. They've done a fantastic job. They also help us in our drainage channels when we weed eat those. The staff highly recommends approval of this item.
Okay, thank you.
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you both. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on this item? Would you call for the vote, please?
Jason Blair.
Yes.
Melissa Hunt.
Yes.
Louis Williams.
Yes.
Adam Webb.
Yes.
Danielle McKenzie.
Yes.
Glenn Lewis.
Yes, item carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Item number 4 is consider approval of a property lease agreement with Baker Brothers Electric Incorporated for lease of .0335 acres of city property located approximately 315 feet north of Southeast 24th Street on the east side of Eastern Avenue, adjacent to the Baker Brothers Office Park, for $1,800 per year.
Mayor and Council, there is a gravel service road that runs east off of Eastern Avenue. It services a group of about 8 storage tanks for oil. Just on the north side of that gravel road, the city owns about half an acre of land. It's of really no value to us other than we end up having to maintain it and mow it and so forth. The Baker Brothers Electric Company it is adjacent to their property. They have requested that we enter into a lease agreement with them where they can extend their fence south to that service road, and they'll use it for storage of equipment and material. It's kind of a win-win for both parties in that they'll maintain it and be able to store it. They will provide us $1,800 payment a year. The initial term of the agreement is 5 years. And then it's a year-to-year basis after that. We would recommend that you approve the lease.
All right, thank you. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve. Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on this item? If not, would you call for the vote?
Melissa Hunt.
Yes.
Louis Williams.
Yes.
Adam Webb.
Yes.
Danielle McKenzie.
Yes.
Jason Blair.
Yes.
Glenn Lewis.
Yes, item carries. Item number 5 is consider approval of a revised job description for the position of Assistant Community Development Director and approved placement in pay grade 119 of the city's salary table approved by the City Council on June 20th, 2016. This is effective July 1st, 2016. Human Resources.
Mayor and Council, the Community Development Department is requesting your approval of the submitted revisions to the Assistant Community Development Director job description. Excuse me, I'm sorry. When Danny Vise resigned, the director took the time to review the way the job had evolved and felt the job description should evolve as well. She put in the hard work of writing a draft, and after a bit of tweaking for conformity, we have a description that I believe allows for better use of the specialized skill sets within the department. Sorry. And that gives the director and assistant director more flexibility to accomplish their own departmental tasks and goals. Staff recommends approval and placement of this budgeted position in pay grade 119 of the city's salary table approved by council in 2016. I'll be glad to answer any questions if I can breathe. And Elizabeth Whiteman, Community Development Director, is here as well.
Okay. You guys have somebody in mind with this job? Are you going to post it out?
We've actually already posted it out with the indication that we were waiting for council approval.
Okay.
Make a motion to approve.
All right.
Second.
Thank you both. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on this item? If not, would you call for the vote?
Louis Williams,
Yes.
Adam Webb,
Yes.
Danielle McKenzie,
Yes.
Jason Blair,
Yes.
Melissa Hunt,
Yes.
Glenn Lewis.
Yes, item carries. Item number 6 is consider awarding bid number 1900-03, Buck Thomas Park Audio Equipment to Audio Video Designs in the amount of $125,421 using 1/4 cent sales tax funds. Parks and Recreation.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, the city took bids for a public address system for Buck Thomas Park. The system would be used by our athletic associations, baseball, softball, football, and then we'd also have a zone dedicated for our special events, in particular July 4th. The lowest and best bidder was Audio Video Design of Moore. We've used them on several projects, park projects. IT's used them before. They've done a great job for us. We have a great relationship with them. So this is a budgeted project and will be funded with the park's 1/4 cent sales tax. I'll be happy to take any questions. What's that?
So quite a difference between the two bids.
There are, and we looked at that. We had several discussions about that, and we think it came down to two things. The highest bid was significant trenching, and then the number of fixtures and speakers that they had was more than really what we needed. So we think that was the two major reasons why there was a discrepancy there.
So how much coverage does this give you throughout the park?
Before we put it out to bid, we tested some speakers out there, and where we're going to put them in baseball is on the west side, facing away from the neighbors to the west. So it has tremendous coverage to the west in baseball, same for softball and football as well. There's really good coverage. And then in the special event zone that we call, we'll mount these speakers to some football light poles, and we'll shoot to the east, and there's real good coverage in the special event zone as well. So we think that we'll have real good coverage.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All right, thank you. Thank you both. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on this item? If not, would you call for the vote, please?
Adam Webb,
Yes.
Danielle McKenzie,
Yes.
Jason Blair,
Yes.
Melissa Hunt,
Yes.
Louis Williams,
Yes.
Glenn Lewis.
Yes, item carries. Thank you. Item number 7 is consider awarding RFP number 1900-04, outdoor fitness equipment for Little River Park to Play by Design Incorporated in the amount of $65,000 using funds donated by Cardinals Care Foundation.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, when we did our Parks Master Plan in 2012, outdoor fitness equipment was one of the amenities that was listed as something that the community wanted. So we've had this in the works for some time. We felt like that Little River was a perfect place for that because it's a large park and it allows the opportunity to put this kind of equipment in it. Staff reviewed the proposals. We had 5 come in. 4 were accepted. Staff determined that Play by Design, their proposal was the best given the budget. This will be funded by a donation from the Cardinals Care Foundation. We've developed a great relationship through our partnerships with Devon Energy, Cardinals Care. They funded a lot of the amenities that we have in Little River Park. Devon did the pavilions, and the Cardinals Care Foundation will do this if you approve, and they also did the restroom. and some other park amenities by the new splash pad and playground at Little River. So we'd recommend approval for this.
We certainly want to thank Cardinals Care Foundation. They've done a lot of work out there. Appreciate it.
Does this type of equipment require much maintenance?
We don't think so. Being outdoor equipment, it's very commercial, it's very tough. There's 2 stations. One is called a rig, where it has several pieces of equipment attached to it, and that's all these are outdoors, but there's no shade over it. And then there's 5 pieces of equipment that will have shade over it as well.
Motion to approve.
All right, thank you.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on this item? If not, would you call for the vote, please?
Danielle McKenzie.
Yes.
Jason Blair.
Yes.
Melissa Hunt.
Yes.
Louis Williams.
Yes.
Adam Webb.
Yes.
Glenn Lewis.
Yes, item carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Item number 8 is consider adopting resolution number 92519, approving the City of Moore Old Town revitalization plan and parking strategy. Planning Commission recommended approval 9-0.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This has been a plan we've been working on for over a year now. We do have a presentation that'll just take you through the highlights of the plan. I don't want to take too much time on that, but if you have any specific questions, feel free to ask them. There was also a copy of the plan in your packet. It's only like 50 pages. We try to make it a pretty easy read. So I'll just start with introductions. So a lot of people participated in this planning effort. Of course, we have our city staff, that is Ava Zorinda. We had an intern that was working on this for about a year from OU, and AJ Kirkpatrick is with ADG. He is an urban planning consultant, and he has been assisting us with some more of the technical aspects. We did hold stakeholder interviews. These are one-on-one interviews where we asked them all sorts of questions about what they liked about Old Town, and what they didn't, what made it successful for them or what didn't. And then we had an advisory committee. This was a 15-member committee that met throughout the planning phase of the Old Town Plan, and they were really there to help us vet ideas whenever we came up with them, review our work to make sure that it fell in with the community goals and expectations for Old Town. And these were made up of a variety of different people, from residents to business owners, property owners, planning commission, and some city council members. And if there's anybody in the audience who served on the advisory committee, if you would just raise your hand. We have a couple people there. So we appreciate their work. It was quite a few meetings over a pretty long period of time. We appreciate that. So here are the meetings. You can see that we've had 7 official meetings. We've had a couple that really aren't listed on there that we met when we were reviewing it with Planning Commission. So I'm going to say we've had at least 7 meetings, and it does span about a year. And throughout those meetings, we asked the citizens what they liked about Old Town, what they wanted to see improved, and we came up with a lot of different ideas that are in the circles on the screen. And what we did is we synthesized all of those ideas and came up with 4 main goals or action areas for Old Town. They wanted Old Town to be walkable. They wanted to have an interactive community in Old Town. They wanted Old Town to have a unique identity and efficient and modern infrastructure within Old Town. Of course, the first item that is usually on people's list of wishes is walkability. And they foresee Old Town as being, in the future, someplace that is very walkable. They want it to be safe. So we made as a goal to prioritize bicycle and pedestrian safety. And part of doing that is to try to slow down the speed that the cars drive through, especially on Broadway and Main Street, in order so people can see all the pedestrians that are in the roadway. It also works good as an economic development tool because now people can see the shops and businesses more as they slow down to help entice people to go into those places of business. Also, to create a convenient and bicycle pedestrian network and to provide those connections between destinations. On this map, the blue lines would be considered the minimum sidewalk network in Old Town. So you'll notice that we did not put a sidewalk on each and every street in Old Town because we don't feel like that is achievable in the next 10 to 20 years, just from budget constraints. But we do feel like providing a minimum network of sidewalks is something that we should start to work towards. And these do connect different destinations that people feel are important in Old Town. And some of these places already have sidewalks, such as Main and Broadway and Howard Avenue, and some of them will need sidewalks as we do new projects in Old Town. And people also want to have a minimum network for bicycling. This is becoming more and more prevalent in the younger generations, and so this would represent a minimum network for the bicycling. The dotted lines, or the dotted green lines, are what we would call a sharrow. So this would be just a simple pavement marking on the street that would indicate to cars and bicyclists that bicycles are allowed on that street. But you can see that most everywhere else it calls for a bike lane. And we also have some connections with multi-use trails that would be used for both bicycling and pedestrians. Especially one that I'll point out is connecting Old Town Park to Central Park. They wanted Old Town to have efficient infrastructure, and part of this includes right-sizing the city streets. So in Old Town, the right-of-ways are extra large. So in a normal subdivision for a residential street, you might have a right-of-way that's 50 feet wide. In Old Town, that same area would be 75 to 100 feet. So very large right-of-ways, and this is really area that the city can use to place different amenities that are needed for modern infrastructure. They do want the drainage to be fixed in Old Town. We've got a great start with that project from Howard, but they'd like to see that continued. And the right-of-way would give a place for bicycle and pedestrian traffic within Old Town where it's needed, as identified on those maps. You can see here that there is a street section for Turner Avenue that is shown. We had an exercise where people, or the participants of the meeting could vote on their favorite type of street based on what amenities it provides. And for a collector street like Turner, they decided that they would like to see bike lanes and sidewalks with two-way traffic. So that is something that we are looking into currently for because it is funded with the 4th Street underpass, to see if that's something that the budget can bear. And also, they would like to have more parking options, providing additional on-street parking where it's appropriate, and utilizing temporary parking where possible for special events. In fact, I would say that parking in Old Town is the #1 complaint we get behind sidewalks. A lot of people are very concerned that they don't have enough parking. We have done a study which is included in the plan, and for the most part, it's not enough convenient parking. So we would really like to increase the numbers of parking along the side streets off of Broadway and here's a map, from Broadway and Turner to provide more convenient parking to the businesses along Broadway. So on this map, the purple lines that are solid represent on-street parking. This is angled parking, usually angled parking, and some of them it already exists. And the dotted lines are going to be future on-street parking. The hashed lines are going to represent the temporary parking that could be potentially provided with BNSF approval for those special events. So these are parking areas that may be gravel, but they would provide an additional parking option for visitors to Old Town. And the other area where we have focused a lot of time on is providing or creating a unique identity for Old Town. Old Town is unlike any other place in Moore because of its age and its development pattern. And so we want to require new buildings that are built to reflect this kind of character that's already been created with past developments. This would include creating design standards for new development and making sure that they build up to the building line to create a good streetscape, especially on Main and Broadway. And this is where AJ's expertise comes into play, so he'll be talking about that in just a few moments. And we also believe that we can allow increased densities where it's appropriate. We've already have some increased densities in Old Town, especially east of the railroad tracks. We believe that this has worked out well for the most part. And in order to generate the type of activity that the businesses need to thrive, we do need to increase the activity in Old Town. And part of that is providing for some additional housing options. We'd like to investigate opportunities for the accessory dwelling units. This is the traditional granny flat that you would see in older areas of town, and some housing types that are deemed the missing middle housing. These are housing types that would be popular probably back in the 30s or 40s. You don't see them much today, but they would be things like the duplexes, triplexes that a lot of the traditional downtown areas have. So just to talk a little bit about implementation. This was very important to the participants in the meetings. We are not proposing any tax increment financing for this project. We're not proposing a business improvement district for this project. We are not proposing any kind of Old Town specific tax. All of these improvements that we talk about in the plan, we believe can be funded through either existing revenue sources like the residential street tax or the general fund. Any bigger projects, such as any sort of improvements to Main or Broadway, would likely be funded through future GO bond extensions. And of course, that would come to the council before it would even go to a vote of the people. So the council would still have a lot of say in any sort of new revenue stream that is being considered for Old Town. As far as implementation, we do believe that there are some need for additional studies that we were not able to include in the scope of this plan. One of those would be to conduct a study on the Central Elementary traffic flow. That was one of the items that people would like to change, is the congestion on 2nd Street. And the other, another code update to the Old Town codes. That is something that we feel is going to be needed to help protect the existing investments that have already been made in Old Town. So we do have a few funded projects that we will be starting soon, or at least are funded in the near future. The Old Town Park is funded, and that was a big key component of our Old Town plan. We believe it'll bring a lot of people to Old Town. Rebuilding Turner Avenue is also funded, and looking at adopting some design standards and simplified zoning regulations for Old Town. This is funded if the council would like to move forward with that. And then we have a list of priority projects, and I won't go through these one by one. They are listed in the plan, and obviously it's really to fix existing problems such as the congestion along Northwest 2nd Street, and it's to provide those additional connections between priority activity points such as the library and community center to the new Old Town Park. and of course, ongoing drainage improvements. And then we have several projects that we would consider to be unscheduled. They really don't have any identified funding source, and we believe that they are out in the long term, probably more than 10, 15, or maybe even 20 years from now. And these would include things like rebuilding Santa Fe Street and rebuilding Southeast 3rd Street. These are items that really would be nice to have, but they're not to that point at this time that would necessitate us doing anything different. And just a quick comment on Main and Broadway. This was discussed a lot in some of the public meetings that we had, and there were some people who really advocated for on-street bike lanes for Main Street. And I just want to let everyone know that that is not in the plans. We feel like we would need to do more traffic studies to determine if that would even be feasible. And so just to make it very clear, this plan does not promote on-street bike lanes or narrowing the down of lanes on either Main Street or Broadway. So we've had a lot of comments throughout the planning process, and especially as we get towards the end, about why we even need this plan. And it really boils down to that we have two choices. Change happens every day, it's all around us. And we can either be controlled by that change and not have any say in how it's done or the impacts that it has, or we can decide to manage that change in order to get an outcome that would be more appropriate for the area. And we feel, the staff feels, that the second option is the better option. And the Old Town Plan simply outlines prioritized and actionable recommendations for implementing the community's vision. So you can look at the plan as a blueprint for revitalizing Old Town. The plan should inform decisions that are made by city staff, by the public, by city leaders, as to what actions need to be taken in the future to realize the community's vision. So, as a recap, what does this plan do? I'm first going to tell you what this plan does not do. This plan does not rezone property. This plan does not take or condemn property, and this plan does not raise taxes. What this plan does do is it can support and justify decisions that this body and Planning Commission will make about zoning changes, ordinance changes, what additional plans and studies should be completed, and public works projects such as streets, sidewalks, drainage, and parking. So what's next? If this plan is approved tonight, then the following will take place over about 1 to 2 years. We will look at zoning changes that need to be made in order to implement these goals and policies and recommendations of the plan. We envision this happening through a subcommittee that will be formed. This will be a subcommittee of city staff, residents, business owners, property owners, Planning Commission, and hopefully some city council members. We would have multiple public hearings to talk about the zoning changes and what the proposals are. And the subcommittee would make recommendations on any changes to the city code or zoning districts to Planning Commission and City Council. And then, of course, Council and Planning Commission would then vote on any changes that come before them. So we have received a lot of comments on the final draft. We did ask to get comments, and we got them. I've listed them here. I'm not going to go over every single one, but they were kind of all over the place. Some people didn't feel like the rezoning of commercial properties would be good. They thought it might hurt business in Old Town. Some people wanted design standards, some people didn't. And some people just didn't want to see any change in Old Town. We feel like we have answered a lot of these questions already. Of course, there's still going to be some decisions that the city council is going to have to make tonight as to whether or not you would like to manage this change that I've been talking about. So, sorry, that's actually an old slide, so ignore that. The implementation of this plan, we've been working with AJ Kirkpatrick with ADG to see what kind of zoning outcomes might we have if we move forward with the zoning changes. And so AJ has come up with a potential regulating plan. Nothing is set in stone. We're still definitely in the brainstorming session. But what he's done, and I'm not going to steal his thunder too much, what he's done is he's taken the current zoning map and the land use plan that's already been adopted, the Vision More 2020, and he's put them together to come up with a regulating plan that that we feel would be easier, more simplified than the zoning that is already out there. And I will let him go into the specifics, into the regulating plan. And I'm going to leave this here for you.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. AJ Kirkpatrick, Director of Urban Planning at ADG. I'm going to walk you through just some highlights of some of the work we've been doing in conjunction with the plan that staff has been working on. I want to make it very clear that tonight, if you vote to pass the plan, it does not approve what I'm presenting in my portion of the presentation tonight. So you can pass the plan tonight, and we can continue to discuss some of the items that I'm going to present here. So let me go ahead and skip to the next slide. Some of our project goals, we wanted to implement your comprehensive plan and encourage redevelopment of Old Town. I want to remind everyone that your comprehensive plan was finished a couple of years ago. There was a large, I would say, amount of support for a revitalized Old Town, something with additional retail, additional mixing of land uses. We want to promote quality urban design. This is under the realization that downtown belongs to everyone, and we really want to raise the bar for development in Old Town, and make sure that you're getting the best quality design you can. We want to promote walking and biking, as Elizabeth mentioned earlier, and we want to consider your existing built environment and some of the suggestions that we're proposing. So we used the third public meeting to have an interactive design workshop with the public that showed up. Also had the steering committee, a couple of your council members took part in the same exercise. On the left, we had some sheets with different types of development. We allowed people, we actually allowed people in a public meeting to have scissors, which is something I'm always really proud about, that we trust the public that way. So we let them cut up those kind of like a paper doll and put them in different parts of Old Town, and to tell us where they think different types of development were best suited. They also were allowed to say, please do not put any of this sort of development on some of these sheets in Old Town. We think that belongs in other parts of our city. So those are some of the photos from that night. This is the individual photos ranked in terms of their preference. So top left is the one that got 9 votes. So there were, I think, 9 tables. And so almost every table picked that top image, which is your traditional downtown commercial, probably has some sort of office or residential above it. So you can kind of work your way down. The greens are going to be, the ones with green at the bottom are commercial categories. So high preference for commercial in Old Town. As you work your way down, you start to see some of that orange, which is that missing middle housing that Elizabeth walked you through earlier. And then finally, you start to see some single family types as you move down. Bear in mind that this is all geographically specific and where they put it, so let me talk about that a little bit. Red here is the residential, those that people put down as residential. The larger the dot, the larger the housing, the number of housing units would be in that dot. So generally, you notice that you don't have a lot of people putting those red dots along Main and Broadway. They're tending to put them more in the corners, which is historically where your residential has been grouped. You see in that northwest corner, there was, I think, a strong preference to continue the nature of that as a single family. And the southwest corner, around the community center, you see that the bubbles start to get a little bigger. And then as you go east along Main, across the railroad track, you start to see some of the largest residential bubbles. Same way, I broke out the commercial types that people used, and it got to the point where there was so much commercial at Main and Broadway that I couldn't even find a place to fit all the bubbles. So people seemed to be all on the same page. It was what I watched the tables do. They all took that same building that had 9 votes, and they all put it right at Main and Broadway, saying that is the heart of our community, and we want to make sure that we have strong commercial buildings at that intersection. So from that, as Elizabeth mentioned, we looked at your past zoning, we looked at some of the land use recommendations in your comp plan, and we took in some of the feedback that we got at that design workshop. And we came up with the 4 categories. There's actually 5 listed. The top green one there is parkland. But I'm going to walk you through each of those 4 categories here. So starting at the highest level, that blue is your town, what we're going to call your town center. It's a proposed category. They're giving you some images of what that might look like. Overall, there was a strong preference that you have shop fronts as the primary facade on the first floor of those buildings. We would allow potentially 1 to 3 stories of development. That's important because a lot of places you might not allow 1-story development, but you do have quite a bit of 1-story development in that area already, and people felt like that was in keeping with the character of your Old Town area. These buildings would be primarily used for commercial. Residential, however, would be allowed on upper stories. We'd have front setbacks in the 0 to 5 foot range, so you're really starting to pull those buildings up to the street front as our previous generations did already. One thing I want to point out here, that a lot of our communities, they brought in zoning 60s, 70s, 1970s, and they were very focused on suburban development at the time and trying to get a handle on suburban development. So they created their categories with suburban development in mind, and then what happened in places like Moore is they then used those suburban categories in Old Town as well. And so right now you have a lot of categories that if I were to show you some of the things that are allowed in them in Old Town, you might be a little surprised. I think your average citizen would be surprised. And in many cases, the sort of development I'm showing here where you're pulling that development up to the street, pulling those buildings up to the street, that's not allowed right now in a lot of your zoning category. So you can't even really rebuild Old Town to the full intent of what people are asking for.
Why do you want to build it to the front of the street?
The question was, why do you want to build to the front of the street? That's typically what we're finding, that we want to encourage walkability and bikeability. We want to have a strong.
You're going to put the sidewalk here, it's right up to the property line.
Yeah, we would have a strong sidewalk. Yeah, we would be building up to the back of the sidewalk.
Richard, how many times have we rebuilt that fence over there across from Buffalo Wild Wings?
Several.
That's what I'm saying. People are going to run right through those buildings.
But I think the idea is that this plan is going to create a slower traffic flow, more walkability, more biking, so you're not going to have the 40-mile, 50-mile-an-hour traffic through there. At least that would be the hope.
Yeah.
We've had 3 people, I think, killed at that intersection at Broadway and Main this year. So, I don't know how you do it.
Well, I think it's really starting to set the stage that that motorists start to expect that this is a place where you should be seeing bicyclists and pedestrians, and you might start to see some pressure to lower speeds through that area. We'd have to really look at what happened in each of those accidents to understand why those are happening. But overall, it's not enough to pass the plan. You really do need to start affecting the built environment. You need to really start communicating to the development community what your expectations are, and that way you won't be quite as disappointed if they come with something that doesn't meet what the public has told you they want. So in this blue category, we are also saying that you should expect that on-street parking is available. That has some implications on some of the things that Elizabeth showed earlier, because especially east of the railroad track on Main right now, there is not on-street parking. These sort of building types usually have retail or office on the first floor. You're going to have a high number of visitors. Those are the sort of people that you want parking on the street. You want to make sure you're getting lots of turnover on those street spots as well. So the next category down, and this is the map just to show you right now, your purple is where you already have parking. The dotted purple is where people are kind of parking that way, but it seems a little unclear about what people are actually supposed to be doing, especially back there on the railroad track. So we just use that in some of the recommendations about where you might want to extend your on-street parking right now. So the next category down is your residential mixed use, and that's represented by the orange on the map. This is viewed as primarily residential in use. However, it would allow a limited amount of commercial that could be capped by a total amount of square footage or a portion of street frontage. Think about your small grocery stores, your bodegas. You might include some live workspace where somebody maybe lives above and maybe is a CPA and has an office in the first floor. It's used, you'll notice it's almost always used as a buffer. So it's right next to your town center blue category, and it's between it and any of your yellow categories, which are more of your lower density residential. So it's starting to step down what people should expect in terms of commercial traffic and pedestrian, and amount of overall traffic to those buildings. In this one, we're saying a minimum of 2 stories and a maximum of 3 stories. That's all very negotiable as we move forward with this project. You're going to start to see some front setbacks moving a little bit larger. So before we had 0 to 5, here we're going to 0 to 10. Really starting to try to encourage townhomes. That project in the bottom right, actually I'm going to talk about a little later, that's actually from Broken Arrow. That's a brand new townhouse project in Broken Arrow. I think is very applicable to what Moore can hope to achieve on this project. So the third category is the darker yellow. So it's in the southwest, the northeast, and the southeast. It's not in the northwest. That's the next category. So this is considered your medium density residential. We capped it at 15 residential units, but again, that's something that can be flexible in terms of what we feel like is your upper expectation of the number of units per project. It would still allow single family, would encourage that missing middle that Elizabeth talked about, duplexes, 3plexes, 4plexes. Maximum number of stories we had at 2 or 3. We wanted to get a little more feedback from the community on that. And it would allow accessory dwelling units, those granny flats that we mentioned earlier. Key point between this category and the other one is that it would not allow commercial space on the first floor. And then also front setbacks we have proposed in the 20 to 25 foot range, which is generally what you're seeing on most of your numbered streets in those residential areas. So it'd be keeping in what the development you already have in terms of the setback from the street. And then your last category would be single family residential. We have that proposed in just the northwest corner, intended for properties that contain just a single family detached residence. Would allow granny flats, so you do see a slow incremental increase of density. It's a way to start adding units in those areas where you don't want to have too much multifamily. The commercial space is also prohibited, same setbacks as before, and we included some discussion of what the style of roof might be because there was some desire to keep the pitched and gabled roof appearance, not necessarily have quite the flat roof appearance that you see in a lot of modern residential developments just in that northwest corner. So Elizabeth showed this once before. That's going to be your current zoning on the left. I want to point out a couple things. You have all those blue categories between Broadway and your railroad track. Those are C5, so those are considered automotive and commercial, what is it, commercial? C6. No, C6 is your CBD. C5 is automotive and commercial recreation, I think? Yes. Yeah. So that allows a lot of land uses that, again, you might be surprised are allowed in your old town right now. But wherever we've introduced these new categories, we've tried to be very sensitive to the rights that the property owners already have. And so you'll see that reflected in the use of the blue and the orange categories, which still allow commercial. Just because I was there on Thursday, at the beginning of 2018, we did a very similar project for Broken Arrow. I think you have a lot of similarities in terms of how you have grown as communities. They are much further ahead on their Old Town Plan. They passed it in 2005, and the public and the private sector have been very much on the same page about implementing that plan. So their downtown, the commercial core of their downtown is doing very, very well. It's probably one of the most successful in the state right now. They asked us to come in and do the same thing. They wanted to start to build a walkable residential area around their commercial core. And so we passed that in early 2018. Thursday was my first opportunity to drive around and see some of the development that has been spurred since these design standards went into effect. Now, they were getting a lot of what I'll call snout houses. They were getting home builders that were coming in and using suburban-style homes that had very prominent garages. And those really start to break up the continuity of these older urban streets. And so you'll see in some of, these are all houses that have been built since our design standards passed. They had two developers that were raring to go and were fully in support of this concept. And they're getting, I think I counted 8 homes that had either been constructed or were under construction since the standards were put into place. And these are very high-dollar homes as well. This is really starting to bring in a lot of disposable income to start to continue to support the retail revitalization of their Main Street area. So I just asked Elizabeth if I could share this. These are from Thursday, and I was really kind of blown away by how much development they're already getting in their Old Town area. So that's all I have for my part of the presentation.
If you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
I have one.
Sure.
Downtown, on the corner of Main and Broadway, there's one guy that owns about 85% of the property. How do you intend to get him to sell it?
Well, this plan isn't really about having anybody sell their property. What it's about is making sure that when a property is vacant, as far as the building is gone, whatever is being built back new fits in with the area. But the gentleman that you're talking about was on our steering committee, so he was at every meeting.
Is there anything that you plan to do with the old school building next door?
The plan doesn't address the old school building.
Because it has major violations. Nobody wants to tear it down.
No.
But it's really not occupied the way it sits now. So at some point, that's got to be addressed.
Right, and that's really not in the scope of this plan.
But it's an old house.
But what she's saying is, I mean, it's not, this plan isn't for the city to go in and say, we're gonna buy this property, or we're gonna fix up this property, or we're gonna do that. It's for the development community at the time, when the time comes. I mean, the city's gonna go in and do the infrastructure, but the rest of that.
I'm familiar with economic geography. That's what I'm saying. There's no business that's gonna locate here until something is done, because there's no reason to. And you want all this off-street parking, but there's no place to go to once you park your car. So how's that gonna work?
Well, you know, that is one thing that we have talked about in the plan. We have a couple of big projects that are coming into Old Town that haven't been here before. We believe that the Old Town Park is going to generate a lot of activity in Old Town, and that's going to start making Old Town more attractive for new development to come in.
Okay.
So we're really...
So that's gonna be the catalyst for it, than anything.
Correct. The Old Town Park is going to be a big part of that, yes.
Okay, I'll buy that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
I would say that I sat on the committee and attended almost every single public meeting and they were all very well attended from people mostly in support. There were people that, like Elizabeth said, that didn't support it. However, I would go back to the fact that this isn't telling people how they need to, it's not telling people that they need to redo their home or they need to redo their business. It's not taking any of those people's rights away. But what it is saying is if a tornado came through our downtown, and as ugly as that sounds, you don't want to see something that's rebuilt based on those zonings. And I was actually shocked when we first came to the very first meeting and I saw what exactly was zoned in those areas, because right now it looks great and it could look better, but it could be something that you absolutely do not want to be rebuilt there as it currently zones. So I'm very supportive of the plan, and I think most of people on the committee were. I would probably say 9 out of 10 were very, very supportive. So.
Anybody opposed to this? Anyone want to speak on this? If you would, state your name and address for the record, please.
Yeah. My name is Brandon Leib. I live at 228 Northwest 2nd Street. My wife and I, a couple years ago, built a home in Old Town We grew up in Moore and always kind of dreamt of living in Old Town. And part of what we really love about the city is just the historic feel of everything. And so what I so appreciate about this plan is the way that it addresses how to sort of keep that feel by preserving the change the way that we're approaching change is by preserving, and the alternative really is just deterioration. So we're very, very excited about the plan and about really kind of holding tight to what makes Old Town special and beautiful and attractive, but also seeing what it looks like to move forward. We have 2 kids. We love going for walks. We love some of the businesses that are in Old Town. And so this just contributes more and more to just the kind of lifestyle, the kind of thriving community that we want to be a part of, where we want to be able to walk safely through the neighborhood. We want to be able to frequent those businesses, and really we look forward to this being more of a destination where our friends can come and hang out in Old Town. So I'm super supportive of this plan and want to say to Elizabeth and her team, thank you so much. Y'all have done a great job. So that's it.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. If you would state your name and address for the record, please.
Okay. Joe Shurka, 201 North Broadway. I also was on the committee and would commend city staff for the efforts that they put together and the trouble they've gone through to put together what I consider a very comprehensive plan and principle. I think as a developer, though, as we move forward, I want to be cautious of how they stated that this plan doesn't change any zoning, but it will be the template for what they will change. And so if you bring a project to Planning Commission or to Plan Review between now and then, that plan will be evaluated based on these standards, okay? Even though the zoning is not changed.
It does change,
but it will be evaluated per this plan. And so I guess my question is how would we handle those projects that fall in the gap before the zoning's officially changed?
That's a very good question. I don't know the answer.
Sure. So the actual plan does not have design standards in them. There's none in the document. So if an application comes in between now and the time that we do have design standards, we would have to approve that as looking at our current zoning that we have today, and comparing that against, the plan is really for new developments. If we just have a building permit come in, that doesn't necessarily is covered under this plan, because it's not a developer coming in, developing a piece of property. So we would just review that as any normal building permit. So it is possible that between now, if this is approved, and the time we get design standards, you're going to have some buildings go up that you could be happy with or you could be kind of shocked at. And that's just the nature of doing business with zoning in a municipal setting.
How long do we expect it to be before we consider the zoning aspect? Will we wait until we have the design standards as well?
So if this is approved tonight, we can begin to work on that right away. It is a public process, which, as I have learned with this plan, sometimes takes longer than you intend or anticipate. So we would begin on that right away. I will say that at the moment, the rate of new development in Old Town is fairly slow. In the past 10 years, I think we've approved maybe 3 new building permits. So I wouldn't anticipate anything coming in right away, but it's something that we want to be cognizant of and work towards, putting in some design standards that the community is happy with and feels like is appropriate.
Design standards, or are you going to have people on that committee? Is that going to be a committee to do that?
That's what I'm proposing, yes.
Mr. Schroeder, would you be able to serve on that?
I've asked to serve on
Yes.
that, yes.
That'd be great. Anybody want to make a motion to approve this plan?
I got one more thing.
Oh,
I was just going to
sorry.
let you know, just because I'm a tenant in the building, you mentioned the old school building, okay? There is some discussion about that property transferring ownership. I'm not at liberty to go into any of that tonight, but just to let you know that there is a little movement, there's a little whirlwind around that, and
So much better.
and I can second every comment you made about the condition of that building and the state that it's in. So anyway, just pass that on to you. Thank you.
Appreciate that. I know the city manager appreciates it too.
Make a motion that we approve the plan as written.
Okay.
I second it.
All right, thank you both. Any other discussion on this? If not, would you call for the vote, please?
Jason Blair,
Yes.
Melissa Hunt,
Yes.
Louis Williams,
Yes.
Adam Webb,
Yes.
Danielle McKenzie,
Yes.
Glenn Lewis.
Yes, item carries. I would like to say thank you to everybody who worked on this. I went to 4 of those 7 meetings that was on that deal, and everybody was all attended very well. And I appreciate all the work that the city staff did on this. It was great. You know, there was a lot of people that were opposed to it, that are still opposed to it. There's a lot of people that are for it. There's a lot more people for it, I think, than are opposed to it. And I just want to say thank you very much for all the work you did, because I know you put up with a lot, because I had to as well. And thank you for your service on that. At this time, we'll recess the city council meeting and convene the Moore Public Works Authority meeting. Number 9 is the consent docket. Number A is receive and approve the minutes of the regular Moore Public Works Authority meeting held March 18, 2018. Item B is approve and ratify claims and expenditures for FY 2018-2019 in the amount of $1,004,122.02.
Move to approve.
All right, thank you. Thank you both. We have a motion and a second. It's a consent item. Would you call for the vote, please?
Melissa Hunt,
Yes.
Louis Williams,
Yes.
Adam Webb,
Yes.
Danielle McKenzie,
Yes.
Jason Blair,
Yes.
Glenn Lewis.
Yes, item carries. At this time, we will recess the Moore Public Works Authority meeting and convene the Moore Risk Management meeting. Item number 10 is the consent docket. Item A, receive and approve the minutes of the regular Moore Risk Management meeting held March 18, 2019. Item B, approve payment of a workers' compensation settlement in the amount of $13,566 for CBR claim number 20500000681 to Joe A. Cooper II, authorized placement of the on the ad valorem tax rolls. Item number C is approve and ratify claims and expenditures for FY 2018-2019 in the amount of $215,984.61.
Move to approve.
All right, thank you.
Second.
Thank you. This is a consent docket as well. Would you call for the vote, please?
Louis Williams,
Yes.
Adam Webb,
Yes.
Danielle McKenzie,
Yes.
Jason Blair,
Yes.
Melissa Hunt,
Yes.
Glenn Lewis.
Yes, item carries. At this time, we will recess the Moore Risk Management meeting and reconvene the city council meeting. Item number 11 is new business. Item A is citizens forum for items not on the agenda. There's no one signed up. Is anyone here who would like to speak? Okay. Item B is the item from the city council or trustees. Prayers for Mark. He's having, or he had surgery today. He got stents put in his heart. So anyway, we'll keep him in our prayers. Anybody else have anything? Okay. Any items from the city manager?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, just a couple of things. Today was Leadership More Day for the city. The group was here attending the meeting. Appreciate them coming. They received tours of most of the city facilities today and presentations from some of the department heads. As a 2018 graduate of Leadership More, it's a very worthwhile project, and I'm glad they were here tonight. And then beginning the week of April 15th, we will begin to schedule budget meetings with council members.
Okay. Item number 12 is adjournment.
So moved.
Thanks. Thank you. There'll be no other discussion.
Danielle McKenzie,
Yes.
Jason Blair,
Yes.
Melissa Hunt,
Yes.
Louis Williams,
Yes.
Adam Webb,
Yes.
Glenn Lewis.
Yes. Thank you for coming.
So